The good news is you can do this. And I'm going to encourage you, whatever you've been through, my prayers are with you, my thoughts are with you.
Now I'm continuing to talk about authentic forgiveness versus false forgiveness. Authentic versus false forgiveness. Before I continue with this topic, please subscribe, share with as many people as possible, and I'll love you to follow me on social media at Ask Dr. Rolla, AskDrRolla. I'm going to leave a link for the first part just to give you a little bit of foundation into this topic. Now, for authentic forgiveness, the focus of the person who has been hurt is more on their heart and their actions. What I mean here is the person who was on the receiving end of the abuse, the trauma, or the abandonment. If they're on the authentic path, they're focused on how they feel about the incident, how they're acting towards others, how they're acting towards the offender, and how they feel about this incident and how they're conceptualizing and processing these complex emotions about the situation. That is authentic. When it's false, the focus is more likely to be on the offender. Many times people who are doing the false kind of forgiveness are doing a lot of manipulative stuff to control the situation. The focus is more on the offender and less on how they are in themselves. And you'll find this in many relationships where the person who is doing the false forgiveness is not even looking at their own personal stuff, even though, yes, they've been hurt. They're not taking responsibility and helping themselves to work through the healing process. And all the attention is on the offender. In some cases, the person who has been hurt may even ignore their own well-being and do things just to get the attention of the offender, to send a message, look at how much you've hurt me, which puts that person in a place of powerlessness, where that they give their power away to the offender. Is a false kind of forgiveness because they're not healing, they're not getting better, they're not dealing with the feelings of resentment about what they have gone through. They're focused on somebody else doing something to make them feel good. The person who is doing the authentic kind is going to feel more empowered. They're going to build their inner coping. And the person that is doing the false kind is going to feel more powerless over time. Even though they may feel powerful at times when they're placing demands on the offender, but over time is going to lead to powerlessness. Another difference is that for authentic forgiveness, and many people would actually be surprised by this, it can actually be harder to forgive authentically than to reconcile. Whereas for false forgiveness, reconciliation can be more of the focus. So that the person who is on the receiving end of the abuse and the trauma, if the person is doing the false forgiveness, the focus is more on reconciliation. They're looking for that apology, and that apology may even be half-hearted, or it may not be there, or whatever they're looking for. But the main focus is, I want to get back in good relationship with this partner. I want to get back in good relationship with my friend. They have not forgiven. They have not given up the feelings of resentment. They feel and they're wishing negative or payback for the person, but they're hastily reconciling. And they're avoiding the work of forgiveness, authentic forgiveness, by reconciling. Whereas forgiveness, the authentic kind, is much more challenging sometimes than reconciliation sometimes, because even when the offender has not changed their ways, or things have not changed in the relationship, regardless of what the relationship status is, the person is still committed to doing the work of forgiveness and wishing that person well, even though they are not getting anything back. And in that way, authentic forgiveness and real forgiveness can be more sacrificial. Another difference is for somebody who is doing authentic forgiveness, they are more likely to be less resentful in the long run because they've done this work. They've accepted that they've been abused, taken advantage of. They've gone through these mixed feelings, and they've come to a place where they realize the benefits of letting some of these intense feelings become better controlled, and they're taking their life back. Over time, even if the offender does not change, or the situation in terms of how they view the person as an abuser or somebody who is taking advantage has not changed, they're less likely to be resentful. But for the person who is doing the false forgiveness, they're more likely to be very resentful. And I work with people like that. They've been in long-term relationships, they've been in long-term marriages, and they are very resentful. 30 years, 40 years. But they did not do the work of forgiveness. And the resentment has increased over the years. And even when it seemed like they've forgiven, it was masked. So it just had layers and layers of pain that has not been handled. Another difference is that for the person who is doing authentic forgiveness, they see the offender as worthy of respect. I may not like you. I may not like what you did to me. This is how the authentic forgiver is doing, is perceiving things. I don't trust you around my children, but I respect you as a human being. I respect your humanity. That person is more likely to have good boundaries, the person, the authentic forgiver. Whereas the person who is a false one is less likely to respect the offender. They may be controlling the situation by being manipulative, disrespectful, doing a lot of payback, doing a lot of aggression, whether that is passive or active aggression, whatever the aggression is. The person who is doing authentic forgiveness does not need an apology from the offender to do the work of forgiveness. It is not because they do not desire it. They know that they've been wronged and they really do deserve an apology. But their own work of forgiveness is not dependent on that apology. They realize the benefit of forgiveness. They're going through the work and the active struggle, and they're working regardless of what the offender is doing or not doing. That is placing that person in a place of power. For the person that is doing the false forgiveness, a whole lot of energy goes into examining the offender. So they're checking out the offender. Does he look sorry? Is he happy? Did he smile at me? Did he send me a message? Does she look repentant? Do you think she has changed? There's so much analyzing of what is going on in the person's mind. The detriment, of course, of that is that the person is not doing the work of letting go. But more importantly, they're preoccupied with the offender. And they're jumping to conclusions many times that has no basis. So I would see patients tell me, I think he's sorry now. How do you know? Because of the focus on that person, they're not making good decisions about whether the person has even changed or not. Whenever we focus on another person with that extent, it takes the power away from us to be objective and to also grow within and to make the kind of decisions we need to make for our protection. Another difference between authentic and false forgiveness is that the person who is doing authentic forgiveness is more likely to be able to see red flags after they've been taken advantage of by the offender. They go through life with a caring attitude, but they're also cautious. And if the offender is showing signs of maybe wanting to reconcile, but it's a false one, they're more likely to see it because they've done the work. Their inner resources are being built. and they can discriminate between the real deal and the fake stuff. But for the person who is doing the false forgiveness, they are more likely to miss the red flags. They're preoccupied with the offender. The resentment is growing. They feel overwhelmed. They're masking with a lot of unhealthy defense mechanisms, and they're more likely to get into danger. These are the people that will end up with the offender, even though the offender is dangerous. They will not able to see it because of this false path. They all end up in another relationship that is going to harm them. So that ability to be discerning is limited with a person who is doing the false forgiveness, and the ability to discern is much better with a person on the authentic path. So this brings us to the part 2, ends the part 2 of this video, and I'm going to finish this topic in part 3. I want to encourage you to allow yourself, with the support of a trained counselor, a spiritual advisor, supported person, to allow yourself to feel the pain that you've experienced. It is unhealthy to go through trauma and abandonment and say it never happened or deny it. It is healthy to actually feel it, but it has to be felt in a safe environment with adequate support. So that is so necessary. That process of feeling is a good place to start to work through forgiveness. You cannot forgive somebody if you cannot accept that they even hurt you. And forgiveness does not mean that you should excuse bad behavior, that you should continue to be a victim of abuse. Forgiveness is first about you. I want to encourage you to take your time. Don't feel guilty if you have feelings of resentment at different times. As you pay attention to yourself, work through those feelings with adequate support, you will see those feelings of resentment getting better. You will feel that you are feel more powerful, and see forgiveness as a viable path for you to let go, and understand that forgiveness does not mean that you should engage in denial or excusing. You can be powerful, you can be assertive, you can be discerning, and you can also be an authentic forgiver. I want you to subscribe, share with as many people as possible, and I will finish this in part 3. Talk to you soon, and thank you so much for listening. Bye now.